Hello everyone, and before we begin today, I would like to introduce you our special guests. The first one here is a Democrat. Please sit down. And the second one is a liberal. Okay, welcome guys, and please have a seat. One of the basic human emotional needs is to believe something or trust someone. But as we already may know from our life experience, this can be a lucrative as well as a dangerous one. On one hand, it can be very rewarding and lead to what we call love or a strong attachment. And on the other hand, it can lead to being manipulated up to a catastrophic end. Therefore, to really benefit from being a believer, we must practice analyzing or researching and sensible reasoning. Today, most of us embrace the idea of living in democracy, particularly the type of democracy preached to us by the United States. However, do we really understand what democracy is and its consequences? Let us first begin with the definition of democracy and its origin. Democracy comes from the ancient Greek demokratia, meaning people, and kratos, meaning rule, which originated in Athens, in Greece, around 500 BC or before Common Era. It is a system of government in which state power is vested in the people or population of a state. Under democracy, rulers are generally elected through competitive elections, and civil liberties as well as human rights are guaranteed. Nowadays, the dominant form of democracy is representative democracy, where citizens elect government officials to govern on their behalf. This is known as a parliamentary or presidential democracy. However, in the book entitled Republic, Plato's Socrates raises numerous criticisms of democracy. Plato's Socrates claims that democracy is dangerous because of its excessive freedom. In addition to that, he claims that in a system where everyone has a right to rule, all kinds of selfish people who do not care about others, only themselves, and are only motivated by their own personal desires, are able to attain the power. In conclusion, he writes that democracy risks bringing dictators, tyrants, and demagogues to power. He also states that democracies have leaders without proper skills or morals, and that it is quite improbable that the most competent to rule will ever come to power. Now let us move on to the more recent history. On the 11th of November 1947, Winston S. Churchill, a Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, was quoted as saying the following: "Many forms of government have been tried and will be tried in this world of sin and woe. No one pretends that democracy is perfect or all-wise. Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. Today, more than ever before, we should pay close attention to the words of Plato's Socrates. Let us open our eyes to see how life in so-called democratic countries really is, and ask ourselves why we are still adhering to antiquated notions and traditions that were criticized even shortly after their conception. We have made enormous progress in science and technology. So why don't we do the same politically, socially, and economically? For now, let us focus on the current political, social, and economic issues. Number one, politicians are nowadays elected according to their eloquent, charismatic promises rather than according to their competencies. Most people do not take or have time to research the politicians' history and simply vote for them based on what they promise. The voters blindly believe the words that go away with the wind. In cases of getting a job, for example, the employer and the employee sign a contract in which they both stipulate fulfilling specific obligations to each other. Subsequently, if any of the parties to the contract breaches any of the conditions stipulated therein, the guilty party is either dismissed from the job or the employer owes a restitution to the employee. In the political context, politicians are paid from people's taxes, and therefore politicians should be considered and treated as employees of the society. Before assuming the public office, politicians should be required to sign a contract obligating them to fulfill their promises, and in a case of not abiding by their promise, they should be dismissed without any delay. Number two, civil liberties and human rights are twins, born from the union of democracy and capitalism, which further reproduce corruption, crime, and violence, manifesting themselves in vulgarism, disrespect, disobedience, and crime, while the police have their hands tied because they must not infringe the culprits' human rights, which are dictated by politicians. The question should be raised here: should anyone who intentionally harms, violates, or kills a human being be treated with human rights, or rather secluded from the society and subdued to punishment? Should anyone who disrespects the police and calls them vulgar names be treated with human rights? Number three, penalties and sentences for criminals are meager these days, thus promoting the repetition of crimes, while incarcerated prisoners have time to learn from each other to commit crimes better after they are released. Thank you for watching this video, and if you have liked it, please press on like or write down any comments that you may have below. Also, please subscribe to our channel so you can see more of our informative, up-to-date, and interesting videos.